Hey everyone, it's me, RubyMarioBros, and yes, I'm back. And I know this might seem different compared to the videos I usually make on here, but I've had this idea for a long while now, and now I think it's the perfect time to finally do this video. So if you're in the plush community, you're probably familiar with StacheBros. With StacheBros being a much more classic Plushuber, and is to me, my favorite Plushuber of all time. It's just the level of quality and professionalism, especially in his later videos, is just something that I don't think much other Plushtubers can really achieve. And if you know StacheBros, you'll also be familiar with Luigi's New Year's Bash, with StacheBros describing it as,
for newcomers, Luigi's New Year's Bash is a special awards ceremony held every New Year's Eve. Viewers get to say what they like most about StacheBros content by voting in a variety of categories. These results are then announced during the ceremony as the entire year is celebrated.
Along with StacheBros' usual content, I've always loved the bashes as well, being just as top-notch in quality as his other videos. So I went in and rewatched all 8 Luigi's New Year's bashes, from the first one 2009 all the way up to the most recent in 2016, and wrote extensive notes about them all. And in this video, as you could guess, I'll be ranking all of them from worst to best. That rhymed. Now obviously this is all just my opinions, and without further ado, let's end this year off with style. Not surprisingly, at very last, we have the 2009 Luigi's New Year's Bash, which I want to state, just because it might be the worst out of all the bashes here, doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad video. I mean, yeah, it's very rough as you could tell, especially in terms of its editing, as well as its opening musical number. Oh yeah, and I think it's also important to mention that every Luigi's New Year's Bash starts off with a musical number as an opener, which, like the bashes themselves, get a lot better later on. And to be fair, this was the first bash StacheBros ever made while he was just starting out, and even in this first one, you can start to see StacheBros' writing and ability shine. As well as for the aspects I did enjoy out of this bash, and I can especially say about the later ones, is that I found some of the banter between characters to be very entertaining. Especially in the part where Mario comes out and Luigi starts shaming him because of his tie, while later praising Toadsworth's tie. And also with these first few bashes in particular, even more so this one, giving a glimpse of what StacheBros' channel and content was like from this time, and obviously how much aspects of it would be changed later on, such as Luigi time still being referred to as Luigi Goes To at this point, and so on and so forth. So overall, the first Luigi's New Year's Bash isn't entirely a bad video, but just okay. But it's clear the bashes from this point onward are going to massively improve upon this one, so let's move on. With the 2010 Luigi's New Year's Bash, a lot of things here are improved upon compared to the first one, starting with the musical number, which I really like the flow of it, and the different kinds of editing and shots throughout. And the character interactions, as well as characters' reactions to the nominees, are also much more funny and interesting compared to the first bash. Speaking of which, the 2010 bash also includes some different categories that would only be in this bash, such as Best Background Music and Best Line, which honestly, I really don't mind going without, because I don't think these are really things significant enough to deserve their own categories. And while this would go on for a few bashes after this, I've always really liked how StacheBros himself would go in front of the camera and talk about a series and whatnot. Really neat stuff. And as I said earlier, that still rings true, it's always super interesting to see what StacheBros' channel was like in his first few years on YouTube. However, some of the problems I do have with this bash, and extends to some other ones later on, is how the framing on the characters can be pretty bad at times. Also, this is just a little note here, but this is the only bash that's in 4x3, as well as in its self-containing StacheBros videos that aren't in 4x3, which feels out of place at many points. Whoa. Well anyways, so simply the 2010 Luigi's New Year's Bash is an overall improvement on the 2009 bash in a lot of areas, but still leaves a lot to be improved, so let's see how the next bashes after this improve upon this one.
I guess singing about Mario Kart was worth it after all. Wow, I am a terrible person.
It just ends like that. There was no point to that, I just thought it was funny. The 2011 Luigi's New Year's Bash, as you can tell, continues to improve upon the previous two bashes. Again, starting with the musical number, which I might actually prefer the 2010 bash's opening a bit more compared to the 2011 bash. The opening for the 2011 bash is still good, however I only really found the end half of it to be interesting musically. And also I think here with this bash, I could really start to see StacheBros' humor and writing the way it would eventually become in the later bashes. If you want to see what StacheBros is like back in 2011, I mean, it's in the title. A few things I didn't like in this bash was, for one, the camera quality looks literally blurry, and also again with some of the framing on the characters being kinda bad. But these issues I have only really extend to one more bash after this one, so these won't be issues for much longer. So in general, the 2011 Luigi's New Year's Bash is again an improvement in many ways, even though I do kinda find the 2010 bash more charming, but it's clear that in terms of writing and editing, the 2011 bash is better in those regards. Let's see how all the other bashes improve upon this one, which, spoiler alert, they are! So as I just said, the bashes now are showing steady signs of improvement, and the 2012 Luigi's New Year's bash is mainly no exception, with the opening musical number being the best out of any bash so far, with the lyrics serving as a retrospective to StacheBros' channel up to that point, as well as with the multiple Luigis on screen throughout being a pretty cool effect. And besides the problems that still linger on from the last bash, such as some of the characters not really being on frame and the camera quality being blurry at points, overall is another improvement compared to the previous bash, and I was kind of surprised by the quality of this and the 2011 bash specifically, because before watching all the bashes for this video, I didn't really think the 2011 and 2012 bashes in particular were all that memorable, but after watching them, it surprised me how quality the bashes in general were starting to become from this point onward.
All those amazing songs StacheBros has created are now available for download on his merch store.
Oh wow, I can download all my favorite StacheBros songs on his merch store? I gotta see this. Okay, and wait. How am I gonna download all my favorite StacheBros songs now? Anyways, the bashes are getting very good so far, but also at this point, it's following pretty much the same structure throughout, with categories and nominees being presented, and characters' explanations and reactions to said nominees. Which I don't at all have a problem with, and anything, I enjoyed them a ton so far, but I wonder what more StacheBros could do with the structure of the bashes to make them more fresh and interesting. Well, why am I saying it like this? Of course this is going to happen. Starting with... Coming in with the 2013 Luigi's New Year's bash, which does offer a bit more in terms of its story and structure compared to the previous bashes, but first, like always, let's look at the opening musical number. With this being the first in a Luigi's New Year's bash to incorporate live instruments, such as the trumpet in this case, which significantly elevates the feel and sound as a whole. Speaking of things that significantly elevates the bash as a whole, this bash is the first notable one to have an ongoing narrative throughout, which the inclusion of, to me, makes the bashes from this point onward much more interesting and entertaining compared to the ones that came before it. With the narrative here being that we're somehow 5 bashes into the series and only now people start actively calling out Luigi for hogging most of the awards. And with Luigi being upset by this, walking out when Mario encourages him to continue on with the bash, which he ends up doing. And even though this may not be as big of a change compared to the previous bashes like I've made it out to be, it makes the bashes much more entertaining and top-notch than they already are. And they're really about to get much more entertaining and top-notch from this point forward.
Not like it's gonna be any surprise on which one of us accepts it.
Can you untie me first?
No.
Now that we're entering the top 3, this is where the bashes really start to go from not only just being great, but to being some of the best plush videos I've ever seen, with the 2014 Luigi's New Year's bash being an example of that. With the opening musical number again incorporating live instruments, making the instrumentation in general much more lively, along with the lyrics also generally getting much better, with here even using part of the 2009 bash's opening, which I've always liked, and with the narrative being much more entertaining this time around, with Luigi expecting Daisy to be at the bash, which she isn't, until much later. As well as with Bowser taking over a good part of the bash, skewing the awards to his favor, leading to a lot of charming and funny moments. And along with some of the most high quality writing, editing, and execution any StacheBros video to me, with every line feels as an opportunity to give some sort of joke or something witty, it's just the type of writing I love out of StacheBros, and does it very well here. It's only up from here, so now let's look at the second best Luigi's New Year's bash. Now, all of the rankings so far have been pretty straightforward, but for a number 2 spot, I have the 2016 Luigi's New Year's bash, where the formula of it is easily the most unique out of any of the bashes. Where instead of it being an award ceremony with a narrative throughout, the categories are instead represented by skits, which is a change I really like. And even though I still might prefer the standard way that the other bashes are structured, I still enjoy the change of pace with the 2016 bash. With the skit for best character having Mario, Luigi, and Bowser playing a board game, with this having a lot of great comedic moments here, along with the Toad host being voiced by Super Mario Movie Maker, makes for some genuinely hilarious stuff. With the skit for best series also being great, with One Small Thing being performed by Bowser and Bowser Jr. being so wholesome and genuinely one of StacheBros' best composed songs. Speaking of music, the opening musical number for his bash is probably the most polished and catchy out of any bash here, just feeling so uplifting and inspirational in a way. Like I'd probably say that this is the opening musical number for any bash that's probably the most memorable to me in terms of its lyrics and in terms of the overall flow of it. Just generally some great stuff. And I can honestly say that I think this is the bash with the best production value in terms of editing, music, and overall professionalism, which I've always loved from StacheBros and shines the most here. However, as you can tell, there's one other bash I think just slightly outdoes this one. You already might know what that is, so let's finally get on to what I think is the best Luigi's New Year's bash. Now, I must preface by saying that not only I think this is the best Luigi's New Year's bash, but also is my favorite plush video of all time. This bash perfectly encapsulates everything I love about StacheBros' content. The amazing writing and comedy, the fun character personalities and interactions, the cinematography, and all just ties together into a fun and near perfect plush video, as well as the opening musical number, which is tied between this and the 2016 bash as being the best opening out of any bash and being genuinely great songs. Heck, I actually bought the opening musical number to the 2015 bash off the iTunes store when StacheBros released some of his songs on the streaming services back in 2018. And yes, Shy Guy, you can indeed download your favorite StacheBros songs. Anyways, with this bash in particular being the longest one of them all, clocking in at over 35 minutes, the narrative for the 2015 bash is much like the 2014 one, but instead of Bowser taking over the bash for a bit, Bowser just plants a bomb and tries to kill everyone on New Year's. Also, hello, RubyMarioBros here, and it turns out that I kind of forgot to mention a part of the narrative when it came to the 2015 bashes. Also, at a certain point, when the total number of votes for the bash were inflated and Wario just stuffed the ballot box for Yoshi to win, but Yoshi didn't end up winning anyways. It didn't affect the outcome of the bash, so yeah. And also something else I wanted to mention is that this bash was actually delayed and didn't end up coming out until March of 2016, which, if you've been following me recently, you definitely know some things about videos getting delayed. Anyways, with this bash being delayed, I genuinely think it was worth it, just because it's not only my favorite bash here, but also my favorite plush video of all time for all the reasons I've already stated, so yeah. Anyways, back to the video. Also, I think this is worth adding. Since this bash is when StacheBros will start recording his audio before filming, I think this leads to a lot more variety in terms of the cinematography and camera angles. This also extends to the 2016 bash too, but I thought this is worth saying for this one, since I especially enjoy the angles and shots for the opening, fitting perfectly with the musical number. And even though I may find the comedy in some other StacheBros videos to be much stronger than this one, the 2015 Luigi's New Year's bash is a near perfect example on how great StacheBros' channel and content is. With it feeling genuinely very professional on almost all fronts, makes this video a joy to go back to anytime, and is, to me, my favorite plush video of all time. Going back and revisiting all of the Luigi's New Year's bashes and ranking them for this video was a lot of fun, and reminded me not only how much I enjoy these bashes, but also how much I respect StacheBros as a whole. Seeing his content gradually evolve and get better and better over time to the point of especially the last few bashes being some of the best plush videos I've ever seen and representing everything I love about plush videos as a medium. And I might sound like a broken record here, but the writing, the cinematography, the editing, and the songs is just the top-notch content that not only makes the bashes, but StacheBros as a channel so memorable and special to me. StacheBros will always be one of my biggest creative inspirations when it comes to how I approach plush videos in terms of writing and general quality, as you could kinda tell. So now here's my full ranking of all the Luigi's New Year's bashes here on screen, including the musical numbers as well, because why not? I mean, they're kinda the same ranking, but yeah. And even though there's likely not going to be another Luigi's New Year's bash anytime soon, for all the ones that have existed over the years, I appreciate for showing me just how great plush videos can truly be. So, thank you. This has been RubyMarioBros, and thank you all so much for the support you've shown on this channel over the past year, and for more great things that come soon.
And so as always, thank you all for watching, and Happy New Year's to you! And happy 2024!